Hi, it's Maya here, and I'm planning to read the shortest books on my TBR. I recently did a video where I showed you all the books from my physical TBR that were under 300 pages. There were 10, and then I decided to make it a bit more random, a bit more fun, and I wrapped them all up and had my boyfriend put numbers from 1 to 10 on them, so I don't know the order. So some of these books I'm more excited about, and some of them I'm least excited about, so I thought the random element would make them more interesting, refresh them in my mind, because some of these books I've owned for quite a while. So adding a fun element will make me read them sooner, I hope. So I'm starting to film this in November. I'll probably continue until December, so this wasn't meant to be like a Christmas calendar sort of thing, but it will seem like unwrapping gifts. So if I pick something as my first book that I'm not that excited about, I know there are more exciting things to come. Without further ado, I think I'm going to unwrap my first book. And this is the first one in the stack. I of course know what the books are, but a lot of them are the same size, so I won't guess which one I will get. It is a paperback, and it is the next volume of Delicious in Dungeon, volume 11 by Ryoko Kui. This is a fancy manga series, and as you can see, this is the one that I'm the most excited about. So I will be rereading volume 10 and then reading volume 11. This will be a quick one because it is a manga. So I will come back to update you on what I thought about this and unwrap my second book. The surprise element does make this more fun. I finished reading Delicious in Dungeon Volume 11 a couple of days ago. I did also reread Volume 10. I like to do that with comics and manga so that I am prepared and remember everything that happened at the end of our last volume. So this continues to be so good. I always say that it's about a group of adventurers who are trying to save one of their own and eating the monsters on the way because they run out of food. So it has like this cooking manga element. The stakes keep getting higher, and it's also very epic in scale, and it has so many interesting fantasy world elements, and not just the fun of the cooking, but there's real stakes for the characters. The person they're trying to save is one of the group members' sister, and of course good friend for many of them. There's this whole bigger dungeon thing with the dungeon lord and everything going on, and it feels like this is amping up to a finish. I wonder if this is gonna be more than 13 volumes. We shall see. I'm not sure, but I'm enjoying it however much longer it lasts. So there's nothing else to do now than to open book number 2. I've wrapped this very well. Oh, In a Glass Darkly. So this one I'm on the fence about. So I have enjoyed what I have read from this. I mentioned this in my shortest books that I own video, that I have read a couple of short stories from this and the Carmilla novella from this before. So I only have 2 short stories, or I think one of them is like novella length. I have 2 stories from this left. So this is like a classic horror short story anthology, In a Glass Darkly by Sheridan Le Fanu. And I really enjoyed Carmilla. And I remember when I read the first 2 stories from this, and then I was reading the Theodora Goss, The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, that series, and I was reading the final book, and in the final book there's a brief mention of a character from one of these stories, and I felt so good because I recognized it. I have 2 left, Mr. Justice Harbottle and The Room in Le Dragon Volant, and they are the center section of the book, and most of them is the Dragon Volant one. So these are the short stories that I've read, and the rest of this is Carmilla. So it shouldn't take long for me to finish this. I said I'm on the fence about this. I meant that this is not one of those that I'm the most excited for, but not the one that I'm the least excited for to read. So In a Glass Darkly is gonna be my next read. It's actually much later now. It is January 2023, but back in December I did finish In a Glass Darkly. So I read the 2 remaining short stories. The first one, Mr. Justice Harbottle, was a ghost story with so many framing devices. Like, in old stories like this, the story is often told by someone who heard the story from someone who is relaying it to someone. In fact, the framing device in this whole book is that these are the cases left by this doctor, and they are being published by his medical secretary, who is sort of now telling them to us. But Mr. Justice Harbottle had so many more of these steps of other people hearing this story from other people who heard it from other people. It was almost comical. The story itself is a ghost story about this cruel judge who gets his comeuppance in an otherworldly way, and it was a decent ghost story. Then I read the longest story in the book, The Room in Le Dragon Volant, which I have to say that I was surprised that it was the longest story because not that much happens in it. I think it's the longest because it is the one that has the most dialogue. And it's about this British young man who travels to France and gets tangled into this web of these devious plots. And I wasn't that interested in it. He was so clueless. I was basically just reading to see how he gets out of it because it felt like he was clearly telling the story at a later date, so he had to get out of it. But how? Because he had no idea what was going on. So it wasn't my favorite. I have now read this whole collection. I think my favorite was The Familiar, which is one of the earliest stories that I had read back when I first started this book. I can't remember that much about it, but I think it had like this very creepy atmosphere. It took me a lot longer to read this than I anticipated, and it was basically because I was reading library books in the middle. So I was reading Our Wives Under the Sea, which was so good, and then I also read Legends and Lattes from the library, which was quite fun. Then also back in December I unwrapped the 3rd book. So I have this little clip of me just unwrapping it. I didn't have time to like really set up my camera, so I just filmed it with my phone. So this one was the only one that I actually know which book is in this wrapping because it is so big. It's the only bind-up that I wrapped, and I wasn't really excited for it. It is Ilmet in Langmar by Fritz Leiber, and book 2, Swords Against Death, is the one that I need to read from the bind-up. So this is a classic sword and sorcery series. I have read the first book like ages ago as an ebook, so I haven't opened this bind-up that I bought a second hand. And it seems like the person who owned this previously has also never opened it because I found this almost impossible to physically read. Like, it doesn't really open. Maybe if I had started from the beginning, it would have loosened up, but I found it impossible to get this to loosen up when I was trying to open the pages. So I'm not going to read this. It's so difficult. I read under 10 pages and then I just gave up. I found that this is on script, so when I get script at some point, I will read it from there. So instead of reading that, I've been reading The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. I hadn't wrapped this up. This I actually bought in December and I already wrapped all those books up in November. So this is another short book, so I decided to supplement this. So I haven't actually finished this yet. I had this with me when I went to visit family for the holidays. It is easy to read these. They're sort of like short stories, the feel of them. So it's easy to read like one chapter or one story and then have a break. So I have a few pages still left. I think about 60 pages or so. The whole thing is 192 pages. And this is a classic, you probably heard of it. It tells about these animal characters, so Rat, Mole, Badger and Mr. Toad. And I have never read this. I have seen some animations, but the animations focus on Mr. Toad a lot, who is a very aggravating character. And I actually like Mole and Rat the most, so the stories focusing on them I've been really enjoying. But because this isn't really part of the project, I thought I'd unwrap the next book now, and this is book number 4. So another book from the actual project, because I really want to finish this project. I thought that it would take me like 2 weeks to get through all these books. No. Oh, I see the penguin logo. This one is another classic. It is, you can see because it's so shiny, Where Angels Fear to Tread by Ian Forster. So this is Forster's first book. I read 3 books from him. I really enjoyed Morris, and I love A Room with a View. So this one is 161 pages. I don't know if there's like an introduction also. No, so it's 161 pages. And I think this novel is set in Italy, like A Room with a View. So it says that it is about Lilia Heriton, who proves to be an embarrassment to her late husband's family, as I think she begins a relationship with a much younger Italian man. So I'm not expecting this to be as good as the latter books by Forster, because this is his first novel. But I do actually own this in both this Penguin English Library edition and as an ebook, so it shouldn't take me a lot of time to read this. Okay, that was the unwrapping for now. I will come back to you when I have finished Where Angels Fear to Tread. So I have finished Where Angels Fear to Tread by Ian Forster, and I had fun with it. Forster's writing is always so easy to read. I read this almost in 2 sittings. I think I read the first chapter and then I read like half of the book in 1 sitting. And then one night when I was planning to read like 1 chapter, I stayed up late finishing this. I think I left like the last chapter, like sort of an epilogue, to read the next day because I needed to go to sleep and I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. But you can definitely see that this is his first novel, so the themes that this tackles are tackled better in his other books, like The Class Divide and people failing to understand each other. But I do like how Forster always pokes fun at like the English sensibilities and like the upper middle class especially. This does tell of Lilia, who is a young widow, and she goes to Italy with her friend and scandalously gets engaged to an Italian man. And this focuses a lot on her in-laws, like her previous dead husband's family, who like try to stop this at any cost. It only like just starts from the engagement and goes on from there. I feel like this almost is a story in 2 halves, which went very well with me reading it in almost 2 sittings. The first part is like very witty and satirical, and then it turns quite tragic actually. So in the first half, I really enjoyed the drama of this like our middle class family and their snobbishness and how they like become offended at the littlest thing. I like the fact that this woman writes about her engagement to her own mother first and not her mother-in-law. Like, you could never forgive her for that. Or how this family springs into action only when it seems like someone else might do it first and make them seem bad. If someone else hadn't done anything, they would have like just ignored the situation. I think the proverb is fools rush in where angels fear to tread. And this book has a lot of fools rushing in, but I think the 2 halves of this weren't in balance. So the satirical and the tragic felt a bit jarring. And now I'm hoping that the next book will not be a classic, because we've had like at the time it was written contemporary classic, horror classic, and a fantasy classic, even though I didn't read this one. And in the meantime, I have also finished a children's classic, So the Wind in the Willows, which was charming. I like the stories not with the toad the best. So the stories with mole, rat, and badger were my favorites, especially mole. Mole is my favorite. So my favorites were The Riverbank, The Wildwood, Mr. Badger, and Dulce Domum, which was the one where they visited Mole's home and it was like Christmas time. I think that one was the best. I also did read it around Christmas time, so maybe that affected it. And then there were a couple that were more vibes, like talking about traveling the world or beauty of nature or things like that. And then the rest of them were focused on Toad. So I did finish this one too. And now it's time to open book number 5. So I'm hoping for not another classic, but we'll see. Oh, this one opened easily. It's a modern classic, so it's upside down. Beloved by Toni Morrison. So yes, I will be reading this one next. I think I at some point marked, like tabbed every 50 pages from this for a readathon. I wonder if the tabs are still inside here. Yeah, they are inside here. So I was planning to read it. I think it was in 5 days if I read every 50 pages. This one is 273 pages. So this, I think, is like gothic toned classic. So it's about a woman who escaped from slavery but is haunted by its heritage, and she must deal with this haunted life on every level. It's, I think, about her baby who maybe passed away, and this house where she lives. So there is a sort of like a gothic haunting in this. So we're definitely continuing on the classic train. But while I will be reading Beloved, I'll also be reading What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This is also a short book that arrived after I wrapped the other ones, so in December. And this one also counts for I'm doing the Buzzword Readathon challenge this year. So death and life and death were the topics for this month in January. So this counts for that as well. And this one is a horror novella based on or inspired by The Fall of the House of Usher, which I just read online to prepare myself. So that's it. I'm going to update you when I finish Beloved. So I'm back and I have finished reading Beloved by Toni Morrison, and this is a modern classic from the 80s, I don't think I said in the last clip. And I was a bit afraid that this wouldn't be for me. I didn't know what to expect. I was afraid that it would be too literary. And also, I haven't read a lot of classics about US history. I don't know if you have noticed, but when I read things like classics or historical fiction, I tend to focus on English or French books. So this was a bit of a departure for me. But I shouldn't have been afraid because this was so good. Let's not forget that this is also a gothic ghost story, and I do enjoy those. I do admit that there was some point, like after the beginning, before the halfway point, that I wasn't sure if this was for me, but then I got into it. The focus on this book is slavery and how the effects of slavery haunt not only the main character Sethe, but also her whole family. And the house where Sethe lives with her younger daughter Denver, who is now 18, is haunted by the ghost of Sethe's elder daughter, who died when she was a baby. And she is the titular Beloved. One thing that really stuck with me from this book, or one concept that really stuck with me, is how Sethe talks about rememory. So she says, if a house burns down, it's gone, but the place, the picture of it stays, and not just in my rememory, but out there in the world. What I remember is a picture floating around out there outside my head. I mean, even if I don't think it, even if I die, the picture of what I did or knew or saw is still out there, right in the place where it happened. And then she continues, someday you'll be walking down the road and you hear something or see something going on so clear, and you think it's you thinking it up, a thought picture. But no, it's when you bump into a rememory that belongs to somebody else. Where I was before I came here, that place is real. It's never going away. Even if the whole farm, every tree and grass blade of it dies, the picture is still there. And what's more, if you go there, you who never was there, if you go there and stand at the place where it was, it will happen again. It will be there for you, waiting for you. And then Denver, her daughter, says that if it's still there waiting, that must mean that nothing ever dies. And Seth says, nothing ever does. So that was a lot, and also the ending was so good. Let's move on. It's actually April now. In March, I did not progress with this book or this challenge at all because I was only reading ebooks. And the way that I got to reading this, or finishing this, I should say, is because I got the ebook from my library and read it that way. Because for some reason, it was just impossible for me to pick up a physical book in March. Now it's time to finally open a new book. I think I will try to go through these last 5 a bit faster than I have gone through the first 5. But first I want to say that in my last clip I mentioned What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. I did read this, but I talk about this in my January and February reads and receipts, so go there if you want to hear my thoughts about that. Let's open a new book. So number 6, it's very bendy and very thin, so I think this is one of the graphic novels. And it is The Crumring Chronicles, Volume 1, The Charmed and the Cursed by Ted Nafee. I was sort of thinking it might be this. So this is the continuation series to the Courtney Crumring series, which I love, and let me go get it. So unwrapping that means that I will be rereading the Courtney Crumring series before reading that. I have just recently reread Volume 1, The Night Things, so I have Volumes 2 to 6, and then the extra Volume 7, which is about Lucius Crumring, to reread before getting to Volume 1. But I hope I can do this quite quickly so that this whole thing won't stall this progress of this challenge. So the focus of this series is not on Courtney Crumring, but on Will Crumring, who you will know if you have finished the Courtney Crumring series. I don't know what to expect. I haven't actually loved any Ted Nafy comic as much as I did Courtney, so I'm hoping that this will like rekindle my love for Ted Nafy's comics. Once again, I will be back when I have finished the Crumrin Chronicles Volume 1 and maybe also Volume 2 since I have bought it after wrapping this up. I'm back and I have just finished my big Courtney Crumrin read. I'm briefly going to tell you what I thought of my reread or first read of the volumes. First I'm going to say that this is like a middle grade young adult early teen book series. It's a modern contemporary fantasy series. It tells about Courtney Crumrin, who is this young girl who moves into the town of Hillsborough with her boring parents, and they move into the house of her great uncle, Aloysius Crumrin, and Aloysius Crumrin just so happens to be a warlock, and Courtney starts learning magic. She is not perhaps the cheeriest of kids, and she quickly learns about the night things who live in Hillsborough and the goblin town and some repercussions to magic, and also there's some things about evil people, like humans. Some volumes have like these nice morality questions of, are the night things who look evil to some people or strange? Are they evil? Or maybe the evil was men all along. But let's start with what I thought of the volumes during this reread. And we're going to start with the original four, I like to call them. So those are Courtney Crumrin and the Night Things, Courtney Crumrin and the Coven of Mystics, Courtney Crumrin in the Twilight Kingdom, and Courtney Crumrin Monstrous Holiday. So these are like the deluxe hardback colored editions. Out of these, my favorites are volumes 2 and 4. So these are the ones that have the most of Aloysius, who I love, and I love him with Courtney. And the Coven of Mystics is my favorite of the whole series, now that I have reread them and read the new ones. Coven of Mystics is where it's at. The Night Things is perhaps the weakest of the original bunch, because this is short stories. It's still good. Maybe the weakest of the original, and then these three are great. Then, maybe weirdly, I read volume 7 of this new collection. So this is Tales of a Warlock. These were originally published in 2 shorter, floppy graphic novels of young Aloysius Crumrin. And these have a bit of a different vibe than the Courtney ones, and they were later collected into this edition. But they were published after the first 4 that I just showed you, so I read this, and I think that this goes through some of the history of Hillsborough, so I think it's nice to know the stuff that is in this for volumes 5 and 6. But you could read this after those. They're fun, they're quite different. They have like this pulp adventure thing going on. I like them. But then, volumes 5 and 6. These came out like 10 years after the volumes that I just showed you. The Witch Next Door is still my least favorite of this original series. It didn't change during this reread, I still don't really enjoy this. And The Final Spell is a lot better, but all in all I think these two somehow have a different vibe to them than the first 4. They sort of feel a bit different, and I don't love them as much as the first 4. But this one has some good things in it and some things that I enjoy and some things I don't. But what happens in this, The Final Spell, the final volume, has a lot to do with the new series. And then we finally get the 2 new ones and the actual graphic novel that I actually unwrapped. And this is the first volume of the Crumrin Chronicles, The Charmed and the Cursed. And this is the second volume, The Lost and the Lonely. I read both of these, and I really enjoyed them. This is called the Crumrin Chronicles because it follows Courtney's little brother, Wilberforce. These don't happen in Hillsborough, the Crumrin family has moved. It's very different. This first one really follows Will. This one has a lot more Courtney in it, but this one has some of her too. And as you can see maybe from the cover, she is older now. And this focuses on Will's struggle to have friends and how he fits into his school. It has like some of the same vibes as the first volume of Courtney Crumrin, but Will is a very different sort of character, and it's fun to see Courtney be this sort of magical, mysterious, powerful character. That was perhaps the role that Aloysius had in the first series. But I enjoyed this so much. Volume 2, the beginning got me off guard, and this one has a lot more to do with the Tales of a Warlock, the Tales of Aloysius the Young Man. It has a lot of callbacks to that as well as to final spell. I was surprised by how much I liked these. Surprised because the vibe of the volumes 5 and 6 wasn't the same as the first 4. I really hope they make more of these. I had a great time. I perhaps wouldn't recommend starting with this series, but I don't know, because I can't look at it from that perspective. I think there's things in this that maybe might be confusing if you started with this, and I think it brings more depth to the characters to know more, especially about Courtney. So positively surprised. I hope there's a lot more to come. So now we are going to unwrap book number 7. I would be lying if I told you that I wasn't losing steam with this project. Originally, I thought I would be doing this project like for a month, and it's been almost half a year now. I have 7, 8, 9, and 10, 4 books left. But I can actually feel that this is a hardcover, which means that I know which book this is, and I'm so excited. This is taking a lot longer to unwrap than the rest because there's a dust cover in here that I don't want to damage. And it is The Witness for the Dead by Catherine Addison, a book that is set in the same world as The Goblin Emperor, which is a fantasy book that I love. This follows different characters as that first one. This follows, what was their name? His name is Kelehar. Thara Kelehar, yes. This is set in this world that has goblins and elves. The main character of the first one was half goblin, half elf, and the main character of this one is an elf. And he is a witness for the dead, so he can speak to the dead. And I'm hoping this has some sort of a mystery element going on, but I actually don't know anything about the plot of this, and I'm excited to find out. So I'll be back when I have finished The Witness for the Dead. I'm back, and no, I haven't read The Witness for the Dead yet. I'm here to tell you that I have decided to cut this challenge into 2 videos. So I have been doing this challenge since like November, so for over half a year now, and I want to get at least part of this challenge out so that you know what I've been reading. So I'm gonna come back with this and the 3 other books, is it 3 that I have left, in part 2. But for now, we're gonna end this here. I'm just gonna go quickly through what I read during this vlog. So I reread volume 10 of Delicious in Dungeon by Ryoko Kui in order to get to Delicious in Dungeon volume 11, which I unwrapped. It was great, the series always is. Then I finished In a Glass Darkly by Sheridan Le Fanu by reading the remaining short stories that I hadn't read yet. Next I DNF'd Swords Against Death by Fritz Leiber from this bind-up, and instead I read The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame that I was already halfway through. Then I read a classic by an English author, This Is Where Angels Fear to Tread by Ian Forster, a book full of disaster people. Then I read a classic by an American author, Beloved by Toni Morrison. Then I unwrapped The Crumring Chronicles Volume 1 by Ted Naifi, The Charmed and the Cursed, which I read and enjoyed. It was a lot of fun. I also read the second volume of The Lost and the Lonely, and I hope there will be more. And I need to put this pile down because I also reread the entire Courtney Crumring series. So this stack is the first part of me reading my shortest books randomly wrapped up. For a while there, I was almost in the height of fashion because there was a brief moment, I think at the end of last year, a bit after I started this challenge, that people were actually wrapping their books and reading them in random order. So I could have hit that trend, but it was not to be. I'm very slow at doing things. I was inspired to do this by the, I think, original Unwrapping my TBR videos by Wish Fulfillment, and also the wrapped up project that Meg from Meg with Books does. So I didn't know about that trend before I started this challenge, but I missed it. We're just gonna continue. I hope it doesn't take me half a year to read the rest of the books, but I will be back with part 2 whenever I have finished the last 4 books. But this is all from me for now, and I'll see you in my next video.